The reason it's important to gather for this kind of discussion on loss and damage is that the world is facing very quickly a situation where we'll be seeing potential temperature increases on the order of 2 to 3, maybe even 4 degrees Celsius increase globally on average, and of course that will vary by region. We've already seen tremendous losses in certain regions, in small island states with major storms and king tides and other things destroying infrastructure. We've also seen in the Arctic, for instance, which wasn't discussed as much here, but a lot of communities losing land, territory, with they call them drunken trees leaning over and things like this. And so it's time, I think, to start preparing for these major impacts and to begin understanding what the limits of adaptation are and what communities are going to need to do, and what national decision makers, what kind of decisions they'll need to take in order to try to protect their citizens from the worst impacts of climate change. I think, absent this, it's essentially going to be every man for himself or every woman for herself, and a kind of catch-as-catch-all approach. So, anticipating some of these impacts is going to be important. That doesn't, diminish the need for action on mitigation and a whole range of topics that were addressed at some level here. But clearly there's, at least some of the community that's focused, the research community that's focused on climate change will have to look at these issues of serious loss. Some of the take-home messages from today's meeting and the next steps for me as a researcher have to do with essentially the need to track and identify where losses are occurring more systematically. So it's not quite so much anecdotal cases from here and there, but a more comprehensive view of where some of these impacts are occurring already. And then using some of the climate model outputs, because this is one of the major, I think, discussion points here, was that there has already been a long discussion on disaster risk reduction and the need to build resilience in communities, but climate change is going to bring additional risks and additional impacts that we need to look at seriously. And they'll be of an order that perhaps surpasses what we've seen in the past. So I also think, in addition to this kind of spatial approach and understanding what the patterns are globally, that it would be very important to start engaging different research communities that are looking at, for instance, marine impacts, crop impacts. They're already doing this, but they may not be doing it with a view to this sort of larger discourse on loss and damage. So can we bring in these communities, maybe the insurance communities and things like that? So those are some of the topics that I think will be important for follow-up.